Everyone. I am Jess and I'm the School Liaison Officer here at Queen Alex Sixth Form. And it is our first podcast of National Careers Week. And today I'm joined with Charlie, who is a doctor in the NHS. I have known Charlie for a number of years, so this is a little bit awkward as I'm interviewing one of my best friends about his job. But hopefully he can give you a really good insight into a career as a doctor. And if you do want to find out any more information about it, there will be links in the description of this video. So we'll start off nice and simple. What is your job title?
So my job title is I'm currently a trust grade doctor at Northumbria Healthcare Trust working at Cramlington Hospital. And as of last August, I've just finished my foundation training.
Fab. So did you always know that you wanted to be a doctor? Was it maybe a decision that you've had in mind for a while, or was it spur of the moment during your A-levels you decided to do it?
So no, I didn't always know I wanted to be a doctor. I wasn't one of those people that had wanted to do it ever since I was a child. And I was probably relatively late to the game. I probably started thinking about it while doing my GCSEs, but sort of properly decided that's what I wanted to do during my AS year.
Fab. So you mentioned that it wasn't something you always wanted to do. So what did you want to do when you were younger?
When I was younger, I wanted to be a builder. But then when I got a bit older, I realised what I meant was I wanted to be an architect.
Right, okay.
But, that never came to fruition.
I mean, I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago and revealed that I wanted to be a newsagent when I was really young. So it's fine. We all have different aspirations and end up in different places. That's fine. So in terms of your kind of route into medicine then, so obviously you spoke a little bit there about kind of GCSE, AS levels and things like that. So what was the route that you took into kind of medicine?
So my route was, probably quite traditional. So I did my GCSEs and then I went straight into sixth form, did A-levels, and I did biology, chemistry and physics and maths to AS level. And then I went straight from A-levels into university to do medicine, and then here I am. So, no gap years or anything like that. I just sort of went straight through. But yeah, traditional A-level route for me. Yeah.
So kind of off the back of that then, you we obviously spoke a little bit about your at the end of GCSE and kind of during AS you were thinking about medicine. Those A-levels that you chose are obviously very science heavy, science based. Did you choose them with medicine in mind and with the goal of being a doctor in mind, or?
That's a good question. I think what it was is that I'd always liked science. I'd always been quite good at science. So it's not a surprise that I did it. But if I'm honest, I think there's like a little bit of me that secretly wanted to do medicine a bit earlier than I let on.
Right.
So it was sort of two birds, one stone, really. I got two subjects I liked.
Yeah.
I had the right A-levels to do medicine if I wanted to. So.
Yeah, sure. So I know that, I probably know the answer to my own next question, but could you take us through kind of a typical day at work for you? I don't know if there is a typical day as a doctor.
Yeah. So it's tricky because especially when you're early on in your training, you rotate around so many different specialties, different hospitals, different regions, and everywhere works completely differently.
Yeah.
So I suppose, at the moment, I'm on an orthopaedic ward and I sort of provide medical cover for orthopaedic patients, namely sort of people who fractured bones. So at the moment, I suppose a typical day is I get there for just before 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we have a meeting with the surgeons where we talk about all the patients who are going to theatre today, all the people who were in theatre yesterday, and anybody that's sick or needs, to be seen. And then we spend the morning until about 12 o'clock going around, seeing the patients, making sure they're ready for theatre, dealing with any problems that come up. And then at 12:30, we sort of have it's called a board round, where we go through all of the patients and sort of formulate our plan. So plans for theatre, plans for discharges. And then the afternoon is often spent sort of doing jobs for those patients. So, requesting bloods, requesting scans, speaking to different specialties. And then hopefully, if all goes well, finish about 4:00. And that's, quite a typical day for what I'm doing at the moment. But like I said, different specialties, your day can look completely different.
Yeah. And obviously I lived with you at uni, and I know that the kind of 8 to 4 day has not been the typical day throughout your training, or
Would
kind of
say that my job at the moment probably isn't very typical. 8 till 4, that is quite a nice setup. So, just to use the other end of the spectrum, I did quite a lot of A&E last year, and I'd be doing, 2 p.m. till 2 a.m. and then 12 till 12 the next day, and then 4
that
till...
is just ridiculous.
And, that's a completely different kettle of fish. That was, seeing loads of patients every day, quick turnaround, and in A&E you get quite a lot of sick people. So a completely different environment. So no such thing as a typical day, I guess.
Yeah. So kind of thinking about that then, was there anything that surprised you about your role, or anything that you maybe didn't realise would be involved, or anything maybe you didn't realise you would be responsible for?
That's exactly it. I think responsibility is probably the most surprising thing. And, you go through medical school and you know that I'm going to be a doctor in a few years, but there's nothing quite like the feeling when you first realise that, I always phrase it as if you're a sick patient, if you're with a sick patient and you look around thinking, where's the grown-up? And then you realise that you're the grown-up.
You are the grown-up.
Yeah. So I think first realising that you're the grown-up is a bit of a scary experience.
Yeah.
So even though I knew it was coming, it's still quite surprising. But yeah, I suppose I didn't realise how much paperwork is involved and how much is involved. And that sounds really boring, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not always, Grey's Anatomy and the crash cart. It's more often quite a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, I feel like that's everyone's perception of medicine, is just like Grey's Anatomy, like A&E, that busy, hectic environment. And while I imagine a lot of it is that, there is also the admin side as well. So moving away from the admin side of it then, what do you enjoy most about your job?
Oh, again, really good question. Sounds really soppy, but I really like the people.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean the patients, I mean the staff and just the general environment of being in a hospital.
Yeah.
Is probably what I love the most. I have a soft spot for little old people as well. And you sort of, when you help your little oldies in hospital and you help get them home or help fix the problem. It sounds really cheesy, but it's true. It's very satisfying. But I also like the fact that I can meet 100 different people a day, and it's just a really, really good environment. So yeah, I suppose that's what I enjoy the most, and I suppose the fact that it's just so varied, just as a career. So that's the thing I enjoy most about medicine as a career, the fact that you could be anything from a microbiologist to a brain surgeon, and it all comes from the same sort of core degree. So so varied, and you can within reason do whatever you want within it. So I think that's an exciting thing as well, because I'm relatively early on, and I'll fully admit I don't really know what I want to do yet. So the fact that I have all those opportunities ahead is quite good.
Really exciting. Like I said, obviously, because I've known you go through your training and go through med school. And I always thought that was really interesting, especially as someone who did English, watching on from the sidelines at like all of the kind of different areas you can work in. And most of them I had no real clue about. So I think that's really interesting, the different specialties and things like that. So obviously the kind of whole purpose of these interviews is to inspire young people who are potentially thinking about going into medicine, and kind of give them any tips and useful information about the career. So is there anything that you wish you had known about your particular career when you were in school or college?
I think, in short, I guess what I'd want to know is you can do it, and it is possible. I think I was quite guilty for thinking that medicine was this, exclusive club that only people who went to private schools did, and you had to have 10 A stars to even be considered to get in and all of that stuff. So I guess I wish I'd have known that, it is achievable and you can do it, because I think I would have then thought about it a lot earlier.
Yeah.
And it's not true that you need 10 A stars. Obviously your GCSEs are important and you do need to have a certain level of grade, but all universities have different requirements and look at GCSEs differently. For example, I went to Newcastle, and at the time they just had a minimum cut-off for GCSEs, so you had to have X number of A's, and then once you met that, they sort of didn't look at GCSEs again. And if you had 10 A stars, you were no more advantaged than someone who had none.
Right.
So I suppose, when it comes to applying, you're better off looking at where suits your particular strengths. But yeah, I think don't let people try and put you off, whether they mean to or not.
Yeah.
So I remember I think it was my first day of sixth form actually, when my tutor, we had a chat about what I wanted to do, and I sort of said, I'm quite interested in medicine, and she sort of took one look at my GCSE grades and laughed and said, don't bother. And I said GCSEs are important, and mine weren't that bad. They were pretty good, I'd be lying, but if I'm honest, I think that's probably what spurred me on to apply.
Oh yeah, I like that, a bit of fuel.
Here I am 8 years later.
Yeah, I feel like it's been good fuel for you, in terms of getting your application in and things like that. But I think obviously it's useful for students to know that, whilst GCSEs are important and grades are important, and we can't shy away from that fact, but it's important to know that they're not the be all and end all. And I think, like you said, obviously each university has their own requirements, and there's not just one blanket set of requirements for medicine. So make sure you're kind of actively looking around, looking at different unis, to kind of see if you could fulfill any of those requirements anywhere.
Yeah, and it's about just applying to places that suit your strengths. So I think, Oxford and Cambridge are one of those unis that just love you to have loads of A stars.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't have even got an interview there. But, there's lots of other unis that don't really weigh that heavily on GCSEs anymore.
Yeah, sure. Do you have any tips for anyone who's thinking about a job, maybe as a doctor or kind of within healthcare?
I think the most important thing when applying to medicine is definitely getting some experience in a clinical setting, whether that's work experience, shadowing, or just volunteering somewhere. I think it's definitely the most important thing. And like we said before, yes, grades are important and you do need to work hard. There's no escaping that. But the things that are going to make you stand out at an interview are, knowing how the NHS works, knowing how hospitals work, realistic idea of what the job entails. And, not only does it all look good on application forms, but I think it's important that you just for yourself, you see what working in hospital is like.
Definitely.
It's not all like Grey's Anatomy, like we said, and I was guilty for probably thinking that as well.
Yeah.
And I just think that when you're at an interview, it shows if you've had some time in hospitals and GP practices, and it shows that you know what you're talking about if you it. And just while we're on that about volunteering as well, I think the thing that really is important about volunteering is sort of the length of time that you do it, because it shows commitment.
Yeah.
Because anyone can volunteer for a day somewhere, but I think if you volunteer once a week for 6 months, that shows a lot more commitment. And I think that's something that they're definitely looking for.
Definitely. So when you did your kind of volunteering, were you doing that while you were at sixth form?
Yes. So every Wednesday night, so I'd finish at sixth form at about 3 o'clock or whenever it was, and then I'd go to the hospital down the road, and I was one of the mealtime volunteers. So I'd get all the patients' meals out. I'd assist anybody that needed help, clear up after dinner, and then I'd just help out on the ward doing bits and bobs like changing beds, doing the laundry, transporting around. And I really enjoyed it. And I think it got to a point where, whenever it was mid-March, when I'd got my offer, I'd accepted my offer and I was definitely going to uni, but I still did it until I left in September just because I loved it so much. So that was fun. So yeah, definitely, if you can, try and get yourself something like that. And obviously with everything going on, I'm not sure what hospitals are doing with volunteers, but hopefully later on in the year
it'll pick up again. So just before we go then, if you could say one thing to somebody who is considering a career in medicine, what would that be?
Oh, that's easy. Just do it. Yeah, absolutely go for it. It's you've got nothing to lose by applying, but it's the best job in the world, if you ask me. It's so varied, you can do so much with it, and try not to let anybody put you off, like I said, whether they mean to or not. Just do your best, work hard, and you've got a really, really good chance. And even if you don't get in the first year, you can always try again next year. And don't worry that if you don't get in now, it's never going to happen. I've got colleagues who are at my stage of training who did 1 or 2 degrees first, then travel the world for a few years, have a couple of kids, and they've still done it. So it's never too late, and I'm sure you'll love it. I still do.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Charlie, for being my guest on this interview. It's been really, really useful. So as I mentioned kind of at the beginning, if you are interested in finding out more information about a career within kind of healthcare, maybe a career specifically as a doctor, we do have more information and links in the description. And Charlie has very kindly said that he is happy to kind of have a chat with anyone via email if you do have any specific questions for him. So I think that could be really useful if you are maybe considering a career in medicine and would like to find out a little bit more. But thank you very much, Charlie.
You're very welcome.